Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships, and yet another attempt on my part to sit down and record something that isn't completely terrible, so fingers crossed. This is myself in the Yorck along with one of my Patreons, Klingensberg there, who is a name that might be familiar from the Supporter Spotlight series, and this is going to be my best ever game in the Yorck, which is one of my newer acquisitions. Now this is a hard ship to love in a lot of ways. You've got the biggest cruiser guns of, I think, the German line at 210mm, but they come with some significant downsides. And basically, from what I understand, you fire HE at anything other than fairly close ranges, because the AP has such a lot of drag applied to it that it takes a very long time to get where it's going, and also once it gets there, of course, it's lost quite a lot of penetration, so it's not actually going to do a lot. So you fire HE at over 10 kilometers, and under 10 kilometers, if you've got broadsides, you go for the AP, and at that point it can actually be quite effective. So you may have caught the chat there down in the bottom left hand corner. This match honestly is more about this map and what happens and why it's better to have B and C. Because we had a bit of a discussion at the start. Somebody was suggesting we try for A and B, which very rarely works out well. It only ever really works if the enemy team lets you get away with it. And myself, and I think it was at least one of the players, was counselling for B and C. And the reason why, which isn't that difficult to understand, at least in my mind, is because of that chain of islands. And that chain of islands, which cuts off A from B, is a pretty good defensive point, because anybody trying to push through there makes themselves vulnerable to fire from the sides, or else torpedoes, or else they have to push round to the edges and they waste a lot of time trying to attack from a good angle. And what more happens, what happens more often than not even, is that people don't push through. They mill around in A and they get stuck behind those islands, and they don't even try pushing, and so therefore it gets very, very difficult to win the match, because you have a lot of your team that are clumped up on the single cap point that you have, and they're not really able to get a good line of fire to the enemy team. They're not able to, or they're not willing to push across and be aggressive and cap, and so yeah, it's not looking great. We do have a couple of ships over here though, and the enemy team's looking fairly spread out. So this might be one of those games where the enemy team lets us get away with it. But it all depends what all those ships around A do, because that's half our team. In fact, I think that's over half our team at the moment. And there's only 3 enemy ships. And if they all go chasing after the enemy ships, which they vastly outnumber, that would be bad news for the rest of us trying to hang on over here and actually make sure that we have at least 2 cap circles. Or else they could actually aggressively push across, and those enemy ships would still maybe be an issue, but they'd be an issue to deal with later, because you could then hopefully have done something to the bulk of the enemy fleet in the meantime. So there's myself and Klingensberg over here, and this Neptune, who I don't know if he was just like dodging really well or getting quite lucky, because I mean, he's down to half health, but he will last a surprisingly long time, and he's actually going to end up being reasonably far up the team list as well. We know the Fletcher is over here. We know there's is it Edinburgh? Whatever the enemy smoking British cruiser is, and the Scharnhorst, and there's some other ships that are kind of heading in this direction, but at the moment it doesn't look like this is exactly a complete disaster. In fact, we've already badly damaged that Donskoy, so if we can finish him off, we can do some damage to the enemy ships, then, you know, maybe we could hold this, but I'm not going to overcommit, and I think I was saying that to Klingensberg as well. Don't overcommit. Don't get yourself into a position where you can't fall back, because it looks like we will need to fall back from here. So pushing in and trying to aggressively take control of this cap would have been the wrong move in my eyes at this point, just because they have more ships to begin with and also more ships coming over here. And what's going to happen probably is that although we have 2 cap circles at the moment, it's going to be very hard to keep control of B. And it doesn't look like we're going to be able to take control of A. So B is the crucial cap. And even if we've held up these ships here long enough for our allies to get out of A, push across into B, and then, you know, deal with the bunched up fleet here, you know, that might be valuable, just having been a distraction for the enemy team. Sometimes that's a valuable thing. If you can tie up the majority of the enemy team with only a couple of ships and not die in the process, that can be very useful. The Neptune is pushing in, however, and the Otago is also quite far forwards and has lost a lot of health. In fact, he's not going to last too much longer. We've also got 1 battleship and 1 destroyer in B, so they're blocking that from being capped. But we're over 8 minutes into this now, and half the team is still around A. In fact, we've got a pair of cruisers that are over on the 2 line. And they're not pushing across, and they've had time at this point to start moving this way, but they're not pushing across. And I think it was around about now that I was starting to get a seriously sinking feeling, if you'll forgive the pun. I suppose it is really a pun in terms of warships. So I'm just trying to set fires. One of the downsides with these guns, though, is that unlike, you know, a Shchors or a Chapayev or even the Myoko, which has got better AP performance at longer ranges, because you're so reliant on the HE and the HE fire chance, which is totally RNG. I mean, I was getting, I think, about 10% fires, which sounds about right for the HE shells. Because, you know, for German HE, these are actually, you know, on the good side of German cruiser HE shells. But your rate of fire is not particularly fast, and the RNG is such that generally, I think I found with this match, and I found generally that by the time I've set fires, it's not like I generally get lucky enough to set the fires immediately after the repair cooldown period has finished. So they can just extinguish the fires as they happen. I don't get to take advantage of ticking fire damage especially. So we lost the Neptune, but he took down a Bismarck with him, and he's going to have done more than most of our team, even though he has died before the halfway mark. So, yeah, basically, I think they what was it, like the Hipper or something they took down, but the 2 of the 3 ships that were south of A have pulled across towards their allies. We do have 2 cap points and a victory point advantage, but they are now starting to group up, and this is the point where they're going to start pushing. Now we've got 2 destroyers in B. One of the destroyers that was over in A has actually come across and helped defend A. So, you know, we've killed an equal number of ships at the point, and we have a victory point lead. But just looking at that mini-map and looking at the spread of the teams and knowing how this map goes, and looking at how little movement there is from all of those ships around A. There's still 6 ships behind that chain of islands. That's half our team. And most of those aren't even in a position to actually shoot at anything right now, because the islands are in the way. This is why A is such a trap. Some maps it's not particularly clear cut, but on other maps it is. There are cap circles that it is better to have, because of the way the map works, the way the map's laid out, the way the terrain is. And this is definitely one of those maps where having B and C gives you a clear advantage. There was a Shimakaze game very recently where we were actually, we had control of B and C, and the enemy team was trying to push through from A. And they got bottled up, and as they were trying to push through the islands, you possibly will have seen this match. I recommend watching it after this, because it'll make an interesting counterpoint. I was getting a lot of torpedo damage, because I was just able to fire torps through the gap. Trying to defend B at the moment is, you know, there's me, the Z-46, the Scharnhorst, and then maybe some ineffective fire coming over from A. And it's been over 10 minutes, and we still have half the team that are around A. So, although we still, you know, still ahead on points, and we are slipping a bit on ship numbers. I think it was around about now that I thought, yeah, we're really not going to have a good chance of winning this unless everybody groups up and pushes now. But it's too late. It's too late for that. We've missed the window of opportunity. And now we've got somebody... I mean, if you've been paying attention to the chat, you'll have seen me say this is exactly why we wanted B and C. And we've got somebody furiously pinging the map on our position. But what are we going to do? We're bottom tier. We're vastly outnumbered, and we're just trying to harass the enemy and stay alive at this point and not give them the points from dying. Because if we charged in against what is basically the entire enemy team, that would just be suicidal. We're waiting for these ships all around A, this half of our enemy team, half of our own team rather, fully half of our team, to do something. And they're not. And that's what's costing us the game. So it's that combination of holding the wrong points and half our team being really ineffective that is not working against us. Oh, that is not working for us right now. It is working against us. I know what I mean. This has still been better than a lot of the attempts that I've had at making videos recently. An awful lot better. This has actually been quite coherent so far. This is like the third Warships replay I've sat down and tried to actually commentate over multiple attempts. Because I've tried and I've tried and it's just not quite worked out. Anyway, so there goes the Z-46. That's our last destroyer. This Fletcher's awfully close. I do have German Hydro though, but I'm also now aware that now that the Z-46 is dead, they're not shooting at him anymore. They might all start turning their guns on me, but it looks like it's only one ship so far. And I have been, maybe I've been too cautious, I don't know, but I've basically been staying towards the edge of my range as much as possible to give myself the best possible reaction time to incoming shells like that, because the Yorck doesn't have a lot of armor, and although it's an okay ship in some ways, it's got that curse of, as with a lot of the tier 7 cruisers, you know, tier 8's where you start getting the good stuff in a lot of the lines. I don't know if that's necessarily true for the Germans though. I mean, I know the Hipper and the Eugen have their fans, but they're not as well regarded as a lot of the other tier 8 cruisers. But yeah, tier 7 is an awkward position for a lot of the tier 7 cruisers, and especially when you get a game like this where you are so very bottom tier. It kind of limits what you can do. So me being cautious up till this point is purely out of a desire to not give the enemy team the points from sinking me, because just going in and getting too close, being too aggressive, would get me focused hard and I would die quickly because I'm in a cruiser. It would be very useful to take out this Fletcher though, and I've actually swung back round to try and get closer to Klingensberg to give him hydro spotting and basically give him fire support from this Fletcher, because it's US smoke, it's going to last a while. He's also attracting fire from, I think, at least one other ship, but we've now got, I mean, the North Carolina on our team, I don't know, I wasn't even paying attention, I don't know how he managed to die, but he did, unfortunately. We're now starting to lose ships from the other side as well. Despite the fact they were all basically bunched up behind the islands, they've still managed to die and just get picked apart. And we've finally now got a Gneisenau that's pushed out beyond the islands. The Chapayev, which was one of the ones that faffed around on the 2 line for a very long time, he's now getting closer. But this is all too late. We've basically lost at this point. We went from having 2 cap points and a reasonably healthy lead to this, which is looking like a complete walkover for the enemy team, and it's all because half the team bunched up around A and didn't push beyond those islands, and it's very hard to do so. Retaining map control is just so much easier if you have B and C, and this game just ended up proving my point absolutely perfectly. And unsurprisingly, you know, there was nobody in the chat going, "Oh, I guess you were right then." Unsurprisingly. So I've decided to just play for some damage at this point. I know this is, you know, this is already a good damage game in the Yorck for me. I'm trying some AP shells now that I'm closer, but I think you need perfect flat broadsides. I don't know how long I'm going to last though, so I'm just putting out all the torps while I can, and at least one of these looks like it'll be good. And the 2, you know, despite these being the 2 German tier 7 battleships with their own torps, yeah, I think I used mine a little more effectively. Now, if I'd held on to The starboard set, I probably could have had this Scharnhorst be a kill as well. Not that it would have made a difference, but it would have been more damage, which would have been nice for the end result screen. As it is, I'm trying to go for the ram, but it seems very unlikely I'm going to last that long. And there we go. So I could have had that kill. I could have done more damage. It wouldn't have ultimately changed the result, though, because our team just played so poorly. Over half our team were completely ineffective. They fell into the trap of A. They got stuck behind those islands, and you can't afford to do that in a domination game. You have to do your best to control at least 2/3 of the cap points, because otherwise it puts you at a severe disadvantage. And it did. We went from what was technically a winning position to a complete wash. And we have killed half the enemy team. But it was just the last couple of ships that were left alive that did the bulk of the work there. And we had so many ships that just didn't do anything that it ended up being pretty one-sided, I think, all in all. So with that last battleship going down, you can see the result screen, 116k damage, which is my best York game to date, but a lot of it was done when we'd basically already lost. Because it would have been, you know, being bottom tier in a cruiser, it would have been very difficult to turn that around with that many ships left alive. 1300 base XP on a defeat, though, is not something you see too often. The Z46 obviously did for him, well for himself. Klingensberg in 3rd place there, and the rest of the team, some of them did very, very, very poorly indeed. And it's, you know, not surprising that they did when you consider their positions on the map and how passive they were for a lot of that. So on this map, on Mountain Range, I think it's called. I've gone on so much about the map and I can't even remember what it's called properly. But yeah, it is all about those 2 cap points. It is about B and C. And if you fall into the trap of getting stuck in A, then it's usually going to go like that. Even if you have a seeming advantage for half the match, it's very easy for an enemy team to then take control and to pin down your team. Not that our team needed pinning down, half of them were, you know, there of their own accord, and it went how it went, and it was disappointing that was, you know, my best York game, and if that had been that result on a win, it would have been a very, very nice result indeed in terms of XP. But even so, 1300 XP on a loss is not terrible. So there we are. I've made it all the way through a video. I think for my next one I might actually do some Fallout 4, because I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4 in my my downtime, as it were, and a particular mod that I've been playing with, which might be of interest to some people if they've not heard of it already. So anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed this instructional video, because this one was a bit more instructional than most of them are. And if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.